Hello my dear friends! In today's video we will review Chapter 4, Government Intervention. Government plays a crucial role in forming the prices on the markets. Through different interventions, government wants to influence on demand and supply, which actually affects on the market and reveals the outcomes. There are different forms such as price controls, it can be price ceiling and price floor, indirect taxes and subsidies. Also, it can be direct provision of services, regulation and legislation. And the last is consumer nudges. But today we will explore only price controls, indirect taxes and subsidies. Let's start with price controls, which are divided into price ceiling and price floor. Price controls are mechanisms of setting the minimum and maximum price. To set the minimum price, government imposes price floor. Here on the graph, we see that PF is the price floor, and by setting it, the market faces with huge quantity supplied and small quantity demanded. It results in surplus on the market. For example, let's imagine that there are 400 goods and only 200 consumers that are willing to buy. It means that 200 goods will be left. Therefore, we get the welfare loss or market failure, which represents the lost benefits to society because resources are not allocated efficiently. Here you see the picture where consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss locate. For those who are taking IB Economics HL, you should know how to calculate it. It is simply the area of triangle and 1.5 multiplied by the base and the height. Moreover, to set the maximum price, government impose price ceiling. Everything is the same, but in the opposite way. So here in the graph, we see that PC is the price ceiling, and by setting it, the market faces with huge quantity demanded and, of course, small quantity supplied. It results in shortage on the market. For example, let's imagine that there are 400 consumers and only 200 goods that are offered by suppliers. It actually means that there is not enough goods for consumers, and they will not buy the products. Therefore, we get the welfare loss or the same market failure, which represent the lost benefits to society. Don't forget that this is the resources are not allocated efficiently. So here you see the picture where consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss locate under price ceiling. And of course, for those who are taking IB Economics, don't forget here that you should calculate it. One more time, it is the area of triangle and 1.5 multiplied by the base and the height. Quick result is that price controls give us that government intervention will provoke to make a market failure. Let's keep going. What about indirect taxes? What do you think? Indirect taxes are imposed on goods and services, frequently on suppliers. Here on the graph, we see that if the government imposes indirect taxes, supply will shift left, resulting in higher price and less quantity. But who is actually benefit from it and lose? Actually, I think consumers and producers lose, and only the one participant, the government, benefits. On the next graph, we see that consumer surplus and producer surplus decreases. It will be a high triangle for the consumer surplus, producer, it will be lower triangle. But we see in the middle rectangle is the government revenue. So, government receives the biggest benefit by imposing the indirect tax. Do we have here market failure? Of course. The right side triangle tells us that it will be deadweight loss because due to indirect tax, there will be less consumers and less producers on the market. You can ask me, okay, as we already had the elasticity theme, I see that supply and demand are probably unit elastic. And probably, I think they share the same parts of consumer and producer surpluses. Yes, you're right, but it depends. It depends on elasticity. Here's the picture which you should redraw and take into your notes. Tax burden always differs depending on the price elasticity of demand or price elasticity of supply. However, the government cannot only restrict something to producers and of course consumers, but it can also somehow help. It will be subsidies case. Subsidy is the financial aid by the government to producers or consumers. Here on the graph, we see that if government imposes subsidy to producers, supply shift right, resulting in more quantity and less price. But what about producer and consumer surpluses? What do you think? The graph below shows that consumers and producers will, yes, gain from it. It will be new producer surplus and new consumer surplus on the graph. But do we have here welfare loss or not? The answer is yes, but why? Honestly, when the government gives a lot of subsidies to particular industry, it results in huge competition. And where a number of suppliers get less profit and tries to survive, finally they leave industry and it results in market failure, the right side triangle. One more time for those who are taking IB Economics HL, you should know how to calculate all new surpluses and of course deadweight loss. It is simply the area of triangle and 1.5 multiplied the base and the height. Here are the reasons for government to give subsidies. It can be lower the price of essential goods, guarantee the supply of necessary products, enable home producers to compete with grain. This is the end of Chapter 4, Government Intervention. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and stay tuned. Bye bye.